Yes, you hit us? Charming. Watch what happens. The Galactic Council chamber buzzed with nervous energy as representatives from 47 species gathered for what many believed would be humanity's final hearing. Ambassador Zethrak of the Corvani Empire adjusted his ceremonial robes, his 4 eyes gleaming with satisfaction. Today would mark the end of the human problem, once and for all. Captain Sarah Chen sat alone at the defendant's table, her hands folded calmly on the polished surface. The lone human representative appeared remarkably composed for someone whose entire species faced extinction. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and she wore the standard blue uniform of the Terran Federation, adorned only with her captain's insignia and a small flag patch showing Earth's continents. The chamber itself was a marvel of galactic engineering, a massive dome that could accommodate beings of vastly different sizes and atmospheric requirements. Floating platforms held delegates who required different gravity levels, while environmental fields maintained perfect conditions for each species. The walls displayed a star map showing the current borders of all member civilizations, with Earth's small solar system highlighted in contested red. High Arbiter Vex Thul called the session to order with a resonant chime that translated perfectly through every delegate's communication device. The ancient being's crystalline form shifted colors as it spoke, each hue carrying emotional undertones that most species could interpret instinctively. We convene today to address the Corvani Empire's formal complaint against the Terran Federation, Vex Thul announced. The charges include unprovoked aggression, violation of territorial sovereignty, and destruction of imperial property. Ambassador Zethrak, you may present your case. Zethrak rose gracefully, his reptilian features arranged in what passed for righteous indignation among his kind. Honored Council, the humans have committed acts of barbarism that demand immediate response. 3 standard weeks ago, my Empire's patrol fleet encountered human vessels in the Kepler 442 system. When our ships rightfully demanded these trespassers leave Imperial space, the humans attacked without warning. A holographic display materialized in the center of the chamber, showing tactical recordings from the incident. The images were damning, human ships firing first, Corvani vessels exploding in brilliant flashes, debris scattered across space. 14 ships destroyed, Zethrak continued, his voice rising. Over 3,000 Imperial citizens dead. This unprovoked massacre cannot go unanswered. The humans have revealed their true nature as violent primitives unfit for galactic civilization. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Several delegates nodded agreement, while others watched Captain Chen for her reaction. She remained perfectly still, her expression unreadable. The evidence is clear, Zethrak pressed on. Humans are a threat to galactic peace. I formally request Council authorization for a punitive expedition to remove this menace permanently. The weight of his words settled over the assembly like a dark cloud. A punitive expedition wasn't merely military action, it was sanctioned genocide. The Council had authorized such measures only twice in its 1,000-year history, both times against species that had committed unspeakable atrocities. High Arbiter Vex Thul's crystalline form shifted to deep purple, indicating grave concern. These are serious accusations, Ambassador. Captain Chen, how does humanity respond to these charges? Sarah stood slowly, her movements deliberate and calm. When she spoke, her voice carried clearly through the vast chamber without amplification, a distinctly human trait that always unsettled other species. Honored Council, the Corvani ambassador has told you what happened. He has not told you why it happened. She gestured to the tactical display. May I present additional evidence? Vex Thul granted permission with a gesture, and Sarah activated her own holographic projector. The display shifted to show a different perspective of the same battle, but this recording began several hours earlier. The Kepler 442 system contains no inhabited worlds, Sarah began. It has never been claimed by any galactic power, remaining in the neutral zone as designated by Council Charter Section 15. Our convoy of refugee ships was transiting this system, carrying survivors from the colony world of New Geneva. The hologram showed a dozen battered civilian vessels, their hulls scarred by weapon impacts and meteor damage. Even untrained eyes could see these weren't military ships. New Geneva was destroyed by a rogue asteroid 3 weeks ago, Sarah continued. 17,000 colonists died in the impact. These ships carried the 8,000 survivors, men, women, and children seeking refuge with our colony on Kepler 438b. The chamber fell silent. Several delegates shifted uncomfortably as the true nature of the human convoy became clear. The Corvani patrol fleet intercepted our refugees in neutral space and demanded they surrender their ships and submit to processing as illegal immigrants. When our escort ships requested clarification of this illegal order, the Corvani opened fire on defenseless civilian vessels. Sarah's voice remained steady, but a new edge crept into her tone. They targeted the hospital ship first. The Aurora carried 1,200 wounded survivors, including 300 children. The Corvani destroyed it without warning, without mercy, without honor. The tactical display showed the horrific moment, a pristine white ship marked with medical symbols disappearing in a ball of plasma fire. Even the most warlike delegates flinched at the sight. Our escort ships, 3 frigates and a destroyer, responded to protect the remaining civilians. We were outnumbered 5-1, outgunned, and fighting to save families, not conquer territory. Sarah's eyes found Zethrax. We destroyed 14 ships because 14 ships were murdering refugees. Ambassador Zethrax's scales darkened with anger. Lies! Those were human military vessels attempting to establish an illegal colony. I have the full sensor logs, Sarah replied calmly. I also have something else. She activated another projection. This time, audio accompanied the visuals. Communication intercepts from the Corvani fleet. The translation matrix rendered the reptilian language into standard galactic, and Zethrax's own voice filled the chamber. Priority targets are the breeding stock, his recorded voice commanded. Destroy the younglings first. Cripple their reproductive capacity. Leave the adult males for last. I want them to watch their species die. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps and angry chittering from multiple species. Even the most predatory delegates were visibly disturbed. The deliberate targeting of children violated every principle of civilized warfare. Zethrax's 4 eyes darted around the room, seeking support that was no longer there. That transmission is fabricated. Human deception. The encryption patterns match Corvani military protocols perfectly, Sarah said. Your own fleet's communication logs will confirm authenticity, if you're willing to submit them for analysis. Vexathul's crystalline form cycled rapidly through colors indicating extreme agitation. This evidence paints a very different picture of events. Ambassador Zethrax, you described an unprovoked attack on Imperial forces. These recordings suggest your forces targeted refugee civilians first. They were in Imperial space, Zethrax protested, but his confidence was cracking. The Kepler 442 system is neutral territory, Counselor Yithtar of the Centauran Alliance interjected. Her insectoid features conveyed cold disapproval. It has been neutral for 300 years. The Corvani Empire has no legal authority there. Sarah remained standing as the chamber devolved into heated arguments. Some delegates demanded investigation of the Corvani claims. Others called for immediate sanctions against the Empire for targeting civilians. The reptilian ambassador found himself increasingly isolated as species after species questioned his version of events. Through the chaos, Sarah noticed something others missed. A group of delegates in the chamber's upper section were communicating through subtle hand signals. She recognized the technique from intelligence briefings, Corvani operatives embedded among other delegations. The Empire hadn't just planned this hearing, they'd orchestrated it as part of a larger strategy. High Arbiter Vexthul finally restored order with a resonant chime that hurt sensitive ears. The evidence presented raises serious questions about the initial accusations. However, regardless of provocation, 14 ships were destroyed and 3,000 beings died. The Council must determine appropriate. An aide rushed into the chamber, its crystalline form flickering with urgent patterns. It approached Vexthul and whispered something that made the High Arbiter's entire structure flash bright red, the color of extreme alarm. "Council members," Vexthul announced, its voice strained, "I have just received urgent intelligence from our monitoring stations. The Corvani Empire has mobilized its 7th Fleet, 200 ships, and they are currently en route to Earth." The chamber fell dead silent. Captain Chen closed her eyes briefly, then opened them with an expression that made several delegates step back involuntarily. "When did they depart?" she asked quietly. 47 hours ago, Vexthul replied. "They will reach Earth's system within 18 hours. Zethrak rose triumphantly, his earlier uncertainty replaced by predatory satisfaction. "The Empire acts to protect galactic civilization. The human homeworld will be sterilized before these animals can spread their violence further." Sarah turned to face the Corvani ambassador directly. When she spoke, her voice carried a tone that seemed to drop the chamber's temperature by several degrees. "You launched a fleet to destroy my homeworld before this hearing even began. You never intended to let the Council decide. This entire proceeding was theater to justify genocide." "The Empire protects the galaxy's peace," Zethrak replied smugly. "Your primitive species will be—" "Primitive?" Sarah interrupted, and for the first time she smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "You know, Ambassador, that's exactly what the Kashari said about us, and the Vorthan Confederation, and the Stellar Compact before them." She began walking slowly around the chamber's center, her hands clasped behind her back. "They all made the same mistake you're making right now." "What mistake?" Zethrak demanded, though something in his voice suggested he was beginning to suspect he didn't want to know. "You think we're primitive because our technology seems simpler than yours, because our ships are smaller and our weapons less elegant, because we haven't unlocked the secrets of exotic matter manipulation or dimensional folding." Sarah's smile grew wider. "But you're confusing primitive with focused." She stopped directly in front of the Corvani delegation. "Every species in this chamber developed along similar paths: energy weapons, force fields, faster-than-light travel, gravitic manipulation. You all reached for the same solutions because you all think in fundamentally similar ways." Murmurs of curiosity replaced the earlier anger as delegates tried to understand where she was leading. "Humans are different," Sarah continued. "We don't just think outside the box. We melt down the box, forge it into something sharp, and use it to solve problems in ways that never occurred to anyone else." "Enough philosophy," Zethrak snarled. "Your world burns in 18 hours. Sarah's smile vanished, replaced by an expression of cold calculation. "No, Ambassador, it doesn't. Because you made a critical error in your intelligence gathering." She activated her communication device. "Captain Chen to Terran Command. Authorization code Phoenix 77. Initiate Damocles Protocol." The chamber's communication systems detected the transmission and displayed its destination for all to see. The signal wasn't going to Earth. It was going to the seemingly empty space of the Kepler 442 system, the same neutral territory where the refugee massacre had occurred. "Response received," Sarah announced to the stunned assembly. "Damocles platform is online, and targeting solutions are locked." High Arbiter Vexthul's form cycled rapidly through confused colors. "Captain Chen, what is the Damocles Protocol?" "Something we built after our first contact with galactic civilization," Sarah replied. "See, When we learned about all these advanced species with their massive fleets and planet-killing weapons, we realized we needed an insurance policy, not just for Earth, but for human colonies scattered across dozens of systems. She gestured to the star map, and suddenly dozens of previously unmarked systems began highlighting in blue. 47 human colonies across the galaxy, she continued, each one defended by automated platforms that most species wouldn't even notice. They're too small, too primitive-looking, built with materials that barely register on standard sensors. The map shifted to show the Corvani home system, where a single dot appeared near the fourth planet. The Damocles platforms use human engineering principles, Sarah explained conversationally. Instead of exotic particles or dimensional manipulation, they use something much simpler, relativistic projectiles. Tungsten rods accelerated to 99.7% of light speed. Several delegates gasped as they realized the implications. A relativistic projectile carried kinetic energy equivalent to antimatter weapons, but it was undetectable until the moment of impact. Each platform can sterilize a planet's surface in approximately 47 minutes, Sarah continued. The Corvani homeworld currently has 7 platforms in position. Their primary colonies have between 2 and 5 each. Zethrak's scales had turned completely white, the Corvani equivalent of absolute terror. You're bluffing. No species would deploy such weapons. You're right, Sarah agreed. No galactic species would. But humans aren't galactic. We're terrestrial. We think differently, plan differently, fight differently. Her expression hardened. We also don't target civilians. But when someone attempts genocide against us, she let the implication hang in the air. This is madness, Counselor Yithtar whispered. Mutual assured destruction hasn't been used as doctrine for millennia. Because galactic civilization found better ways to resolve conflicts, Sarah replied. Unfortunately, the Corvani Empire seems committed to the old ways, so we'll use old solutions. High Arbiter Vex Thul's form shifted to deep purple. Captain Chen, surely you cannot be serious about Ambassador Zethrak, Sarah interrupted, turning back to the Corvani delegate. You have a choice. Recall your fleet, submit to Council investigation of your actions in the Kepler 442 system, and accept whatever judgment they render. Or continue your attack on Earth and discover what humans do to species that attempt genocide. The chamber held its breath. Zethrak stood frozen, his 4 eyes darting between Sarah and the star map showing his doomed homeworld. The fleet cannot be recalled, he said finally. They're under sealed orders. Sarah nodded as if she'd expected this answer. Then, in approximately 17 hours and 37 minutes, we're going to show the galaxy exactly what happens when you hit humanity. She turned to address the entire council. I suggest you prepare your evacuation protocols for Corvani space. This is going to get very unpleasant, very quickly. The implications of her words settled over the chamber like a death shroud, and for the first time in council history, absolute silence reigned as 47 species contemplated the terrifying efficiency of human warfare. Zeus, you hit us? Charming. Watch what happens. Part 2. The Corvani 7th Fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of the Sol system with the confidence of apex predators. Fleet Admiral Kithax stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Worldbreaker, his massive frame casting shadows across the command center as he surveyed the primitive human homeworld through the view screen. 200 ships spread out in perfect formation, a display of overwhelming force designed to break enemy morale before the first shot was fired. Battleships the size of small moons, flanked by cruiser squadrons, their hulls gleaming with exotic armor that could deflect any known weapon. Fighter wings buzzed between the larger vessels like angry insects, their pilots eager for the slaughter to begin. Status report, Kithax commanded, his voice carrying the authority of 3 decades commanding Imperial fleets. All ships report ready for battle, Admiral, his tactical officer replied. Sensor sweeps detect minimal human fleet presence, perhaps 30 vessels of destroyer class or smaller. No significant orbital defenses around the third planet. Kythax's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Intelligence reports had been accurate. Humanity possessed only a token defense force. The Empire's propagandists had painted humans as dangerous savages, but the reality was far more mundane. Another primitive species about to learn the cost of defying galactic order. Begin the assault, he ordered. Target military installations first, then population centers. I want this over within 6 hours. The fleet began its advance, weapons powering up for the bombardment, plasma cannons that could crack continents charged with deadly energy, missile batteries loaded with antimatter warheads prepared to rain destruction on the blue-green world ahead. But as they closed distance, something unexpected happened. Admiral, the sensor operator called out, confusion evident in his voice. I'm detecting massive gravitic distortions throughout the system. They're not matching any known human technology. Kythax moved to the sensor station, his 4 eyes scanning the readouts. The distortions were subtle but widespread, dozens of them scattered between planets and asteroid belts. They were too regular to be natural phenomena, but too small to be significant weapons platforms. Stealth mines? His tactical officer suggested. Impossible, Kythax replied. Human technology isn't advanced enough for true stealth fields. Continue the advance. The fleet pressed forward, but the sensor operator's voice grew more urgent. Sir, the distortions are moving. They're tracking our approach vectors. Before Kythax could respond, communication arrays across the fleet lit up with an incoming transmission. The main view screen shifted to show a human male in military uniform standing in what appeared to be a command center buried deep underground. Corvani Fleet, this is Admiral Marcus Thompson, Terran Defense Command. You are in violation of Galactic Council neutrality laws and have been ordered to withdraw by the High Arbiter. This is your final warning. Kythax stepped forward, his impressive bulk dwarfing the communications console. Human Admiral, I am Fleet Admiral Kythax of the Corvani 7th Fleet. Your species has committed acts of terrorism against the Empire. Surrender unconditionally, and your death will be swift. Thompson's expression didn't change. Admiral, you have 10 minutes to begin withdrawal procedures. After that, we will consider your fleet a hostile force and respond accordingly. You will respond? Kythax's mandibles clicked with amusement. With what? Your handful of patrol boats? With something your intelligence apparently missed, Thompson replied calmly. You're familiar with human history, Admiral. We've fought wars for thousands of years, against each other, against nature, against impossible odds. We've learned a few things about warfare that apparently never occurred to galactic civilization. Kythax gestured dismissively. Primitive combat techniques mean nothing against superior technology. You're right, Thompson agreed. Primitive combat techniques don't, but strategic doctrine does, force multiplication does, and psychological warfare definitely does. The human admiral touched something off-screen, and suddenly the sensor readouts across the Corvani fleet went insane. Sir, the tactical officer shouted. Mass emergence signatures throughout the system, hundreds of vessels appearing from nowhere. But it wasn't hundreds of vessels. It was thousands. Ships materialized from behind asteroids, from within gas giant atmospheres, from orbital positions that should have been impossible to maintain undetected. They weren't large. Most were frigate-sized or smaller, but their numbers were staggering. What kind of stealth technology is this? Kythax demanded. No stealth, Admiral. Thompson's voice came through the speakers. Just patience. Those ships have been in position for 3 weeks, powered down, drifting like space debris. We've been waiting for you. The tactical display painted a picture that made Kythax's blood run cold. The human fleet hadn't been hiding. It had been lying in ambush. Every major approach vector was covered by overlapping fields of fire. Escape routes were blocked. The Corvani formation, designed for overwhelming attack, was perfectly positioned for a massacre. "Impossible," Kythax breathed. "No species maintains fleets of that size in reserve." "No galactic species does," Thompson corrected. "But humans aren't just another galactic species. We're a planet of warriors, Admiral. Every civilian transport can be militarized. Every cargo hauler can carry missiles. Every mining ship can mount weapons." As if to prove his point, vessels throughout the human fleet began revealing their true nature. Cargo containers opened to expose missile batteries. Mining ships powered up cutting lasers scaled for combat. Even civilian transports bristled with defensive turrets. "You see, Admiral, galactic civilization thinks in terms of dedicated warships and professional military forces," Thompson continued, his voice taking on a lecturing tone. "Humans think in terms of total war. When you threaten Earth, you don't just face our navy, you face our entire civilization." Kythax forced himself to remain calm. Numbers weren't everything, and Corvani technology was still superior. "Quantity cannot overcome quality, human. Your primitive weapons cannot penetrate our armor." "You're absolutely right," Thompson agreed again. "Our standard ship-to-ship weapons would barely scratch your armor. That's why we're not using ship-to-ship weapons." The human fleet suddenly changed formation, spreading out in a pattern that made no tactical sense, until the first salvo fired. Instead of energy beams or conventional missiles, the human ships launched something else entirely. Streams of small objects moving at incredible velocity. Kythax's sensors identified them as simple metal projectiles, but the velocity readings couldn't be correct. "Railgun artillery," Thompson explained as the projectiles streaked across space. "Magnetically accelerated tungsten penetrators. We can't match your exotic armor, but we can match your velocity and exceed your kinetic energy." The projectiles struck the forward elements of the Corvani fleet with devastating results. Exotic armor designed to deflect plasma and particle beams proved useless against solid matter moving at relativistic speeds. The projectiles punched through hulls like paper, their kinetic energy converting to heat and radiation that cooked everything inside. 3 cruisers died in the first salvo. "Evasive maneuvers!" Kythax roared. "All ships scatter formation!" But the humans had anticipated this too. As the Corvani fleet broke formation, automated platforms throughout the asteroid belt activated. The small gravitic distortions his sensors had detected earlier revealed themselves as hunter-killer drones. Thousands of them, each one equipped with the same railgun technology as the ships. "Mines aren't our style," Thompson's voice continued as Corvani ships died around them. "Too passive. These are active defense platforms, each one capable of independent target acquisition and engagement. We call them Hornets." The Hornet drones swarmed toward the Corvani fleet, like their namesakes protecting a hive. Small and agile, they were nearly impossible to target with weapons designed for ship-to-ship combat. Their railgun stings might not penetrate heavy armor, but they didn't need to. They targeted engines, sensors, weapons arrays, all the delicate systems that kept warships functional. "Return fire!" Kythax commanded, but his fleet was already in chaos. Plasma cannons designed to fight other galactic species found themselves nearly useless against human tactics. The enemy ships moved unpredictably, using chemical thrusters and reaction mass instead of gravitic drives. Traditional targeting systems couldn't lock onto ships that maneuvered like atmospheric fighters instead of space vessels. Worse, the humans weren't fighting like a fleet. They were fighting like a pack. Individual ships coordinated with deadly precision, setting up crossfire zones and supporting each other with overlapping fields of fire. When Corvani vessels tried to concentrate firepower on single targets, other human ships would swoop in to provide cover or drag damaged vessels to safety. "Sir, we're losing ships faster than we can target theirs," the tactical officer reported. Through the chaos, Kythax began to understand the true scope of human preparation. This wasn't just an ambush, it was a carefully orchestrated battle plan, designed specifically to counter Corvani tactics and technology. Every aspect of human fleet deployment showed intimate knowledge of Imperial doctrine. "How did they know?" he asked aloud. Admiral Thompson heard the question through the open channel. "Know what, Admiral? Your battle tactics? Your ship specifications? Your fleet movements?" The human's smile was predatory. "Simple. We asked the Kashari, and the Vorthon Confederation, and the dozen other species you've conquered over the past century. Turns out survivors of Imperial pacification are very willing to share intelligence with anyone planning to fight back." The revelation hit Kythax like a physical blow. The Empire's conquered peoples hadn't been passive victims, they'd been active collaborators in humanity's war planning. Every tactical doctrine, every technological specification, every strategic weakness had been cataloged and shared. "You've been studying us for decades," he realized. "Since first contact," Thompson confirmed. "While you dismissed us as primitives, we were learning everything about galactic warfare. While you focused on crushing rebellions, we were building alliances with your enemies. While you planned this attack, we were preparing for it." Another wave of Corvani ships died as human tactics adapted in real time to Imperial countermeasures. The humans fought like no galactic species ever had, not as individual ships seeking glory, but as a single organism dedicated to total victory. "Admiral," his communications officer called out, voice tight with panic. "Priority transmission from Imperial Command." "On screen," Kythax ordered. The view screen split to show Emperor Vashtak himself, the supreme ruler of the Corvani Empire, looking haggard and desperate in his throne room. "Admiral, abort the attack immediately and return to Imperial space," the Emperor commanded. "My Emperor, the battle is irrelevant," Vashtak roared. "The humans have activated weapon platforms throughout Imperial space. 17 colonies are under direct threat. The homeworld itself has multiple targeting locks." Kythax felt the bottom drop out of his world. "Impossible. We have early warning systems. Their platforms are undetectable until they activate," the Emperor continued. "Simple construction, primitive materials, but armed with relativistic projectiles that can sterilize worlds. They've been in position for months, maybe years." The tactical situation suddenly became crystal clear to Kythax. This entire operation had been a trap from the beginning. The humans had used the Kepler 442 incident to goad the Empire into attacking Earth, knowing that any assault fleet would be committed to a lengthy journey that left Imperial space vulnerable. "All ships, immediate withdrawal to hyperspace," Kythax commanded. But it was too late. Human ships had moved to block the major hyperspace emergence points. Not enough to stop a determined fleet, but enough to delay one. And delay was all they needed. "Admiral," Thompson's voice cut through the chaos on the bridge, "your Emperor is negotiating with our diplomatic corps right now. I suggest you power down weapons and prepare to receive new orders." Kythax stood frozen as his mighty fleet found itself trapped between human tactical brilliance and Imperial political necessity. Around him, staff officers looked to him for orders he couldn't give. For the first time in his military career, Fleet Admiral Kythax of the Corvani 7th Fleet was completely outmaneuvered by an enemy he had dismissed as primitive. And in the depths of space, Admiral Thompson smiled as he watched another galactic empire learn the most important lesson about humanity. We don't just fight wars, we win them. "You hit us? Charming. Watch what happens." Part 3. 6 months after the Sol system confrontation, the Galactic Council chambers had undergone significant changes. The seating arrangements reflected new political realities, with the Terran Federation occupying a prominent position among the major powers. Where once humanity had been represented by a single captain defending her species, Now Ambassador Elena Rodriguez sat with a full diplomatic staff and military advisors. The Corvani Empire delegation was notably smaller and more subdued than before. Ambassador Zethrak had been replaced by Junior Delegate Keitha, a younger reptilian who kept his eyes downcast and spoke only when directly addressed. The Empire's formerly vast territories had been reduced by half, with most liberated worlds choosing independence or alliance with other galactic powers. High Arbiter Vexthul called the assembly to order, its crystalline form showing the deep blue patterns of cautious optimism. We convene today to review the implementation of the Terran Accords and address ongoing concerns about galactic security doctrine. The Terran Accords had revolutionized galactic politics. Born from humanity's demonstration of superior strategic thinking, they established new principles for interspecies conflict resolution, refugee protection, and defensive alliance structures. More importantly, they created the Galactic Defense Initiative, a collaborative military force designed to prevent future genocidal campaigns. Ambassador Rodriguez stood with the easy confidence that had become humanity's trademark in galactic affairs. Honored Council, I'm pleased to report that Phase 1 implementation of the Defense Initiative has exceeded all projections. 17 species have contributed ships and personnel to the Joint Fleet, and our strategic training programs have been adopted by 34 separate militaries. The training programs were perhaps humanity's most valuable export. While other species had superior technology, none could match human strategic doctrine. The concept of total war, force multiplication through civilian mobilization, and asymmetric tactics had proven devastatingly effective when applied to galactic-scale conflicts. Counselor Yithtar of the Centauran Alliance gestured for recognition. Ambassador Rodriguez, there are concerns among some member species that human military doctrine may be too aggressive for peaceful galactic civilization. Could the counselor be more specific? Rodriguez asked politely. The recent liberation of the Altair Collective, for instance, Yithtar continued. The Hegaki Dominion had held those worlds for only 18 months before human-trained forces drove them out completely. Some question whether such rapid total victory serves long-term stability. Rodriguez exchanged glances with General Harrison, her military advisor. The Altair liberation had been a textbook example of human strategic thinking applied to galactic warfare. Instead of the prolonged sieges and measured advances typical of galactic conflicts, human-trained forces had struck simultaneously at all key points while coordinating civilian uprising and supply line disruption. The Hegaki Dominion was strip-mining those worlds and enslaving the population, Rodriguez replied. Our doctrine prioritizes rapid resolution to minimize civilian casualties. Extended conflicts cause more suffering than decisive action. But the psychological impact on defeated forces, Yithtar began, is intentional, General Harrison interjected, rising from his seat. Fear of human military doctrine is a feature, not a bug. When potential aggressors know they'll face total defeat rather than negotiated surrender, they think twice about starting conflicts. The chamber buzzed with uncomfortable conversation. Many species still struggled with humanity's approach to warfare, not just winning battles, but making the cost of starting them so high that few dared try. There's another concern, announced Counselor Drex of the Titanium Confederacy. Human expansion rates have some members worried about imperial ambitions. Rodriguez smiled. Counselor Drex, could you clarify what you mean by expansion? Our colony worlds? 47 systems in 6 months, Drex replied. That's faster than any species in recorded history. All in previously unclaimed space, all with full council approval, and all offering immediate membership to any species wanting to settle there, Rodriguez countered. We're not conquering territory, we're opening it up. Any being who wants to live under human protection is welcome. This was perhaps the most unexpected aspect of humanity's rise to galactic prominence. Instead of hoarding their military advantages, humans actively shared them with anyone willing to adopt their social and political systems. The result was a rapid expansion of human influence through voluntary association rather than conquest. The Terran model of government does seem popular, admitted Councillor Vexthon of the Silicon Syndicate. Representative democracy, individual rights protection, economic freedom, these concepts have spread to dozens of worlds. Because they work, General Harrison added. Species that adopt human political systems don't fight each other. They collaborate, trade, and build mutual prosperity. Our expansion isn't imperial, it's ideological. High Arbiter Vex Thul shifted to questioning Yellow. There is one matter that requires immediate attention. The Void Hunters have been detected in Sector 94. Their raiding fleet is estimated at over 500 ships. A chill settled over the chamber. The Void Hunters were nightmare figures from galactic legends, a nomadic species that consumed entire civilizations, leaving nothing but dead worlds in their wake. They operated beyond the galactic rim, appearing every few decades to devastate border regions before vanishing back into deep space. Previous encounters with the Hunters resulted in the loss of 17 worlds and over 40 billion lives, Vexthul continued. No military force has ever successfully repelled a full Hunter fleet. The traditional response has been evacuation and abandonment of threatened territories. Junior Delegate Keitha spoke up for the first time, his voice trembling. The Empire lost 3 colonies to the Hunters 60 years ago. Their technology is beyond anything in galactic space. Their ships regenerate damage, their weapons pierce any known defense. What's the Council's current response plan? Rodriguez asked. Evacuation protocols are being distributed to all systems in their projected path, Vexthul replied. We estimate 17 worlds will need to be abandoned. Refugee processing centers are being established in safe zones. Rodriguez and General Harrison exchanged another look, this one carrying an entire conversation in the space of a few seconds. With respect, High Arbiter, Rodriguez said slowly, humans don't abandon worlds. Ambassador, you don't understand, Councillor Yithtar protested. The Void Hunters aren't like other species. They're apex predators on a galactic scale. No conventional fleet can stop them. Good thing we don't use conventional fleets, General Harrison replied. He activated a holographic display showing the threatened sector. We've been monitoring Hunter movements for 3 weeks. Their pattern is predictable. They sweep through systems methodically, consuming everything before moving on. They expect prey to run or hide. Are you suggesting we fight them? Keitha asked incredulously. We're suggesting we destroy them, Rodriguez stated flatly, completely and permanently. The chamber erupted in shocked gasps and frantic conversation. Several delegates began protesting simultaneously, their voices creating a cacophony of alarm. High Arbiter Vexthul restored order with a resonant chime. Ambassador Rodriguez, surely you cannot be serious. The Hunters have ravaged galactic civilization for millennia. They're considered a natural force like stellar storms or gravitational anomalies. They're not a natural force, Harrison countered. They're just another enemy with different capabilities. Yes, their technology is advanced. Yes, their ships regenerate. But they follow predictable patterns and have obvious weaknesses. What weaknesses? Vexthul demanded. Rodriguez activated another display. They're nomadic, which means limited industrial capacity. They rely on consuming existing infrastructure rather than building their own. And most importantly, they've never faced human tactical doctrine. The Defense Initiative fleet stands ready, Harrison added. 67 ships crewed by humans and human-trained personnel equipped with the latest improvements to our strategic systems. 67 ships against 500? Councillor Drex sputtered. That's not courage, that's suicide. That's force multiplication, Rodriguez corrected. We don't fight fair, counselor. We fight smart. She gestured to the display, which now showed detailed tactical projections. Human doctrine isn't about matching enemy capabilities, it's about negating them. The hunters regenerate damage. We'll use weapons that prevent regeneration. They have superior armor. We'll target their mobility and supply lines. They expect enemies to flee. We'll be waiting for them. General Harrison took over the briefing. Every human military academy studies historical campaigns against technological superiors. David versus Goliath isn't just a story, it's a tactical manual. The hunters are about to discover what happens when humans have 6 months to prepare for an enemy with known capabilities. But if you fail, Yithtar whispered, they'll reach the core worlds. Billions will die. If we fail, we'll die fighting, Rodriguez replied simply. But we won't fail. Because humans don't just fight to win. We fight to end threats permanently. High Arbiter Vex Thul's crystalline form cycled through rapid color changes indicating extreme internal conflict. The Council cannot officially authorize such a mission. The risk to galactic civilization is too great. We're not asking for authorization, Rodriguez said. We're informing you of our intentions as a courtesy. The Terran Federation considers the Void Hunters an existential threat requiring immediate neutralization. You're really going to do this, Keitha breathed. You're going to fight the Hunters. Rodriguez turned to address the entire assembly. 6 months ago, this council debated whether humanity deserved to exist. Today, we're debating whether we should save galactic civilization from its oldest nightmare. The difference isn't our technology or our numbers. It's our perspective. She paused, letting her words sink in before continuing. Galactic civilization has lived in fear for millennia because you've accepted that some threats are too great to overcome. Humans don't accept that. We don't evacuate from monsters. We hunt them down and kill them. General Harrison stepped forward. The Defense Initiative fleet departs for Sector 94 in 18 hours. Any species that wants to contribute ships or personnel is welcome. Any species that wants to evacuate threatened worlds will provide safe passage. But we will not abandon those systems, and we will not allow the hunters to continue terrorizing the galaxy. The chamber fell silent as the implications settled. Humanity, barely 6 months into galactic politics, was preparing to face down a threat that had haunted civilized space for thousands of years. High Arbiter Vex Thul finally spoke, its voice carrying resignation and hope in equal measure. May the cosmic forces watch over you, humans. If you somehow succeed in this impossible task, galactic civilization will owe you a debt that can never be repaid. Rodriguez smiled with the same confidence she'd shown when facing down the Corvani Empire. Don't worry, High Arbiter, we'll add it to your tab. As the council session ended and delegates filed out in worried clusters, Ambassador Rodriguez remained in the chamber with her staff. Through the massive viewports, stars twinkled peacefully in the distance, the same stars that had watched countless species rise and fall, had witnessed the birth and death of entire civilizations. Soon those stars would witness something new, the moment when humanity stopped merely surviving in galactic civilization and started leading it. The Void Hunters were about to learn what happened when you picked a fight with a species that considered impossible odds just another Tuesday, and across 17 threatened worlds, billions of beings slept peacefully, never knowing that their salvation wore human faces and carried human weapons into the darkness between stars.